You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tian. In addition to this show, I host Locked On NHL. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, we are cranking it up in the offseason. We are less than a month away from the draft. Can you believe it?
Less than a month away from the draft and getting a little closer to the Packers season, the 2024 season, hopefully a Super Bowl season coming up. But before we do get started, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com. That's theticketking.com, or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Theticketking.com, Gil. Hey, I'm excited, though. Draft's coming up, and it's still some offseason news that's happening for Green Bay. There's a lot that could happen between now and when week one kicks off in Green Bay or elsewhere in America or down in South America in Brazil. It's a possibility. Packers and Browns finalists to play in that Friday opener in Brazil against Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot can happen between now and then.
Yeah, a lot will happen between now and then, but looking forward to each step along the way. Never a dull moment when you're following the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, for sure. And definitely not a dull moment a few days ago, Gil, where getting ready for this 2024 season upcoming, Packers signed some competition for Anders Carlson, signing free agent kicker Greg Joseph. He was the Vikings kicker for the previous 3 years. 3 years in Minnesota, Gil, he was 82.1% on field goals. He only missed one field goal attempt from 39 yards or less as a Viking. Carlson, he was perfect on field goal attempts from 39 or less as a rookie. 90% on extra points in his career with the Vikings. Carlson was 87.2% as a rookie this past season. Joseph last year, he was 80% last year. The Vikings, they were 28th in field goal percentage. Packers were 24th. The Vikings, 20th in extra point percentage. Packers were 30th. So Joseph wasn't great, but he's a veteran. He's been around for a bit. Gil, what do you make of this signing by Brian Gutekunst going into the 2024 training camp and season?
It's really, I think, I look at it this way. This is a message to Anders Carlson and an insurance policy in case Anders Carlson doesn't work out. Clearly, the Packers would prefer that Carlson become more consistent and take that next step and be the next long-term kicker that this team has had. But Greg Joseph gives them, I would say, a fairly reliable alternative with experience who can come in. This is an insurance policy, really. And he will battle with Anders Carlson for that spot. But, to me, if a tie goes to Carlson, the leg strength, definitely Carlson has an edge. But as far as consistency goes, Carlson needs to step it up, or else he's not going to be the next long-term kicker of the Green Bay Packers.
And Anders Carlson didn't have any true competition in training camp as a rookie. The Packers went all in on the youth movement. We said on here, hey, don't go half-ass, go whole-ass. And that's what the Packers did with the youth movement last year. But this is a sign, Brian Gutekunst's like, hey, this team can win it all. They can win it all in 2024, and a bad kicker isn't going to hold them back. And Brian Gutekunst is not going to sit and wait on this. If Anders Carlson doesn't get his crap together, he's going to be hitting the streets, and he's going to be a free agent. Last year he had such a strong start to the regular season for the Packers, but including the postseason, he missed at least one field goal or extra point attempt in his last 5 games and 10 of his last 12 games of his rookie season. I don't know if it's just a tired leg, dead leg going forward where he just kind of lost some steam, lost some confidence along the way. But this is a sign where it's like, hey, if you don't show any improvement, significant strides as our kicker, we're moving on.
Yeah, and, it's interesting because if you look back at Packers history, everybody talks about, oh yeah, the Packers have had essentially, you know, 3 starting quarterbacks barring injury since 1992. What
Mhm.
amazing stability they've had. They've had essentially just 4 kickers since 1989. You
Yeah.
had Chris Jackie until 1996.
Mhm.
Then you had Ryan Longwell. You had 1 season of Dave Rayner, and then you went straight from 2007 to the present, well, till last year rather, with Mason Crosby. So essentially, you had 3 kickers who were there for a long time at one of the least stable positions in football, and then you had 1 year of Rayner. Now you've had 1 year of Carlson. The question is he the next Dave Rayner, or is he the next, Chris Jackie, Ryan Longwell, or Mason Crosby?
Well, he's definitely an upgrade from Brett Conway. I'll put it that way. So that's a blast from the past right there. But
There
hey,
you go.
it's better to have these problems, even though a kicker can make or break a game. And with NFL games being the slimmest of margins, they can make or break a win. Being a win, it can determine a win or a loss. And Carlson missed a huge kick against San Francisco in the divisional round that would have put him up by 7 in the fourth quarter. Packers end up losing that game late in Santa Clara. It's better to have a kicker problem than a quarterback problem, though. That's for sure. So
Yes.
the only concern I have with Greg Joseph is that at Lambeau Field as a Viking, he did not kick very well there. He was 3 of 7 at Lambeau Field, 6 of 6 at extra points, thankfully, but 3 of 7 on field goals. He struggled at Lambeau, and maybe being the home team kicker changes the psyche a little bit.
Right.
But this is a kicker that I was texting with some friends of mine who cover the Vikings, who do podcasts for the Vikings, who are fans of the Vikings, and they weren't very heartbroken over losing a guy like Greg Joseph. So the only thing that it's positive is that this will be a literal kick in the butt for Anders Carlson. That's the only positive I could take away from this.
And that's what you have to hope you see,
Yeah.
that Carlson is ready and accepts the challenge. And let's face it, if the challenge causes him to stumble, then he wasn't your guy in the first place.
Mhm.
And better to find that out sooner than find that out later. Let's hope he's equal to the task.
And I hope he's like his brother Daniel, where Daniel struggled early in his career with the Minnesota Vikings, and now he's outside of Justin Tucker, he may be the best kicker in football. And if Anders can follow in those footsteps, man, you got something cooking for a long time at the kicker spot, which if you don't have to worry about that for 10, 15 years, that's a huge benefit. Some other free agency news for the Packers. Former Packers third-round pick Josiah DeGuara signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday. DeGuara tallied 47 catches for 436 yards, scored 2 touchdowns, primarily in an H-back role for the Packers in 4 years with the team. Gil, overall, Josiah DeGuara liked the person, didn't really love the player, though.
Yeah, I think that sums it up well. I always liked Josiah DeGuara and was rooting for him, but he never really panned out to be. He was going to be the next Kyle Juszczyk, right? He's going to be the next.
That's what he's drafted for.
That
Yeah.
was what the expectation was. And look, even if he was 2/3 of that, it would have been more than acceptable. Unfortunately, over the 4 years he was in Green Bay, we saw his production go down and his usage go down in each of those seasons. He never really found a role on the offense. He did help out a bit on special teams. I mean, Aaron Rodgers at one point just kind of ignored him. And whether that was partially on Rodgers or partially on DeGuara, we'll never know because we're not inside the huddle.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, I wish him all the luck in the world in Jacksonville. Like you said, always liked the person, and he really didn't have, especially after last year's draft, a role going forward in Green Bay.
Him tearing his ACL his rookie year, I think, changed things so much
Yeah.
because I did like the early promise that he showed in his rookie year, but then he got hurt. He tore his ACL week 4 on a special teams play on punt team, and it was just a really unfortunate thing for Josiah DeGuara that he wasn't really the same after that. And it looked like there was definitely some promise there. Now, the big question is, we didn't expect Josiah DeGuara to be back in Green Bay, honestly. I just didn't see it, especially now we're a few weeks into free agency, and the Packers probably didn't even offer him. They just said, hey, thanks for your time, but we're going to move on. You just wonder who's going to fill that H-back role, and is it going to be could we see Ben Sims or Tucker Kraft or Luke Musgrave kind of shifting off in that role? Could the Packers draft someone else to be in that role? Could A.J. Dillon, a bigger running back, could he fill that role? There's a lot of options, and it's just going to be – I'm curious to know what Matt LaFleur's plan is going to be to replace that role in that offense, a role that definitely needs improvement.
I get the feeling we're looking at like a 6th or 7th round draft pick or an undrafted free agent or two that, or maybe both, that will be added to compete for that role. I don't think they invest significant draft capital like they did with Josiah DeGuara, who was, a 3rd round pick. I would be surprised if the Packers picked an H-back/fullback that early in the draft this year.
Especially because they need offensive line depth. I think that's a little more important. They need some inside linebacker depth. They need some running back depth for competition back there. So, and they obviously need safety help, and they need defensive secondary help, especially and possibly corner could be a sneaky need if Eric Stokes is not healthy enough to play again this year. I feel like there's a lot more pressing needs than an H-back. I'm with you. A late pick on a possible H-back guy or an undrafted rookie free agent, I'm all for that. I don't think there's many free agency options available right now to fill that role. There's no Kyle Juszczyk just walking around in free agency right now. So curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of teams feature the position. It's not like there are 32 starters out there like you have for kicker. There's 32 kickers who are going to make the roster in the NFL. Maybe 10 teams, 12 teams use an H-back fullback with any kind of regularity?
Yeah, if you can find an Alec Ingold type like the Miami Dolphins now have with Mike McDaniel running the show there for the Miami Dolphins, that's obviously it's just an ideal fit. You just hope that they can find the right guy coming up, ideally in the draft. But going on with the Packers, though, obviously lease negotiations at Lambeau Field. Some interesting news here. Packers president Mark Murphy. It was the owners' meetings going on this past week down in Arizona. Note on Tuesday, Green Bay Mayor Eric Gendrich cut off Lambeau Field leasing negotiations with the team. Murphy said, "It's disappointing. Packers aren't going anywhere. Things will work itself out." Murphy went on to say the Packers, they've invested a lot of money into the stadium. They're not asking for public money. They typically don't. They're willing to put in as much as $1.5 billion into Lambeau Field through 2030 or 2040. Murphy also said they've already put in more than $600 million of the Packers' own money into the stadium, but with the city of Green Bay walking away, the Packers were going to go forward with $80 million in stadium improvements, but now those investments are being halted, which could affect the fans and affect next year's NFL draft, which is coming to Green Bay in 2025. Now, Mayor Gendrich responded to Murphy on Tuesday. He tweeted that they'll continue to work with the Packers and they're ready to re-engage on lease negotiations as soon as the city's core priorities are acknowledged in the team's offer. Packers, they still have 18 years remaining on their lease agreement. They're free to make any necessary improvements to their facilities. Gendrich said the Packers' preferred terms would reduce the rent they owe to the city, and it is not a good deal currently for the city's taxpayers. Gendrich said if the Packers want new lease terms, they need to bring forward a proposal that's worthy of consideration. Gendrich said the city's confident they'll be able to come together on a new agreement down the road. Gil, this just sounds like it's a lot of politics. It's a lot of business. It's a lot of stuff a lot of red tape that just needs to essentially be weeded out and a lot of terms that need to be simplified and make sure that it works for the city and it works for the team.
Yeah, this is a game of political chicken is really
yes,
what
it is. Yes, it is.
And, the team and the city, I don't even know if it's a question of who's going to blink first. They need each other more than, we could even put into words here.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, since the fans own the team, technically, do you realize if the Packers ever leave Green Bay, what happens? Do you know what the deal is with the lease and all of that? And it's in the agreement?
I do not necessarily, but I know if Green Bay were to somehow, if the Packers were to somehow leave Green Bay one day, that would have significant ramifications in Brown County, in the city of Green Bay, and the entire state of Wisconsin.
And it's not going to happen.
No.
But if I recall correctly, the American Legion Post in Green Bay would get all the funds from the sale of the team, which would make it the most fancy and wealthy American Legion Post in the United States by far, because the team's got to be worth a few $billion right now.
Oh, easily. And every I mean, what was it? The Carolina Panthers, they were bought for $2.9 billion by
Right.
David Tepper a few years ago. The Packers are worth more than the Carolina Panthers, folks.
Exactly. So it's not going to happen as far as the team. They'll reach an agreement. Let's put it that way. The T's have to be crossed. The I's have to be dotted. People have to make their speeches and make their stand. And when push comes to shove, it'll get done. And look, you mentioned the 2025 NFL draft being held in Green Bay. That's the clock that's ticking that's going to make
Yes, it
this
is.
thing get finished.
Oh, yeah. And you got to make sure Lambeau Field is the way they've been able to restore it and improvement throughout the years is just incredible. The addition of the Lambeau Field age. I mean, I remember going there when I was my first game at Lambeau, I believe I was 9 years old. And it was a game against the Detroit Lions. They smoked them like they typically did back then when I was that young. And the improvements they made from then to now is just unbelievable. Just the Titletown district outside too. It's a lot of fun if you don't want to tailgate. You park at people's lawns, you grill out in people's driveways. There's nothing like it. But there's something for everyone there. It's like the people who don't want to tailgate or don't want to set up their own stuff. And it's just, and the stadium is in such great shape. They've done a great job just renovating and improving it throughout the years. But obviously there's just little things. And what the Packers, we've talked about on this podcast before, what they've done such a great job of over the past is not putting the cost on people who don't care about football and don't want to support the team, where you see it so often in pro sports where owners socialize costs and they privatize profit, where it's essentially, hey, if we don't get the money for this, we're going to leave. And essentially cities rally because they're like, hey, we don't want this to leave. And there's a huge economic boost for our city, for our state, for our county, whatever it may be. And you just hope the Packers don't obviously go down that road where it's like, hey, we're looking to socialize more costs and privatize more of our profit. I don't see that happening. Something will get done. But I hope they don't go down that road of every professional sports franchise that now exists in America.
Well, the Packers are different. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people love them is that they don't have an owner in the traditional sense of the word, that there are shareholders, that there's a board of directors. And, in essence, in some ways, that saves the team from itself, because how many times have we seen owners mess up things for a franchise?
Oh, plenty of times. Plenty of times. You don't want to be the older Irsay. What was Jim Irsay's father's name? Who moved the team from Baltimore to Indianapolis. No. You don't want to be
have an Irsay. You don't want to have an
Art Modell.
Washington football fans about ownership and how that can affect a team. So yeah,
you don't want an Art Modell either. You don't want that either.
You don't want an Art Modell. You don't want your team packing up like the Baltimore Colts did in the middle of the night, moving stuff into vans. You don't want any of that. So
yeah, big mess. I don't expect the Packers to leave anytime soon. I think that's a safe prediction that I can assume for you as well, Gil. But obviously, NFL owners meetings, coaches meetings going on this past week. And with those meetings comes some NFL rule changes. And some new rule changes for next season includes the banning of the hip drop tackle. Notable players to get injured by this in the past include Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith, Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill, Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. There's a change in the challenge process. You only have to be successful on 1 of 2 challenges in order to earn a third coach's challenge. Previously, you had to be successful on both challenges to earn a third challenge. And then new hybrid kickoff rules adopted from the XFL. They developed this in 2020. The kicker will still kick from their own 35-yard line, but the remaining 10 members of the kickoff team will line up at the opponent's 40. At least 9 members of the kick return team can line up between their own 30 and 35-yard line, the setup zone. This is in hopes of fewer high-speed collisions in the kick return game. The ball will ideally be dropped in the landing zone between the 20 and the goal line. If the ball lands in the end zone or goes out of the end zone, it's a touchback at the 30. Previously was the 25. A kick out of bounds results in the ball at the 40, which no change there. No one but the kicker and the returners can move until the ball is caught or until the ball hits the ground. Gil, obviously, this is the rule change that I'm gonna kind of harp on a little bit and talk about a little bit. But of the rule changes that happened this week, what stands out the most? What do you think helps or hurts the Packers the most out of these rule changes?
Well, I think on the field, the one that helps the most is the kickoff change, because we're going to see a lot more Keyshawn Nixon and he is, the two-time defending all-pro return specialist. So to
Mhm.
me, you know, so often we heard last year, oh, until the weather gets cold, they'll just keep kicking the ball out of the end zone and he won't. Or we got to see Keyshawn Nixon returning the ball because he was impatient 8, 9 yards deep in the end zone. And he's like, to heck with this. I'm running it out anyway.
Uh-huh.
And you know what ended up happening? He would get to like the 25 anyway. And it would be like, and it would look good statistically. Hey, I had a 36-yard or 34-yard return. But if he would have done a touchback, he would have ended up roughly in the same spot. So to me, look, kick returns are an exciting part of the game.
Mhm.
And, I can remember going back in Packers history, Steve Odom was a great kick returner in the mid to late 70s, where he had a 95-yard kick return for a touchdown, 95-yard punt return for a touchdown, and a 95-yard catch for a touchdown.
Whew.
Like the odds of that, very
Yeah.
slim to none. But, you know, to have that be a part of the game again, or a bigger part of the game again, to me is exciting. If you can eliminate those high speed collisions that the league is trying to cut down on, I think that's definitely a plus. But it'll take a little getting used to. I'm not going to lie; it's going to look very strange at
And
first.
every special teams coordinator is just thinking, how are we gonna cook up the right formula to get the
Right.
most out of this new rule? And kickoff team, how are we gonna create the right formula to prevent a big play from happening? Hey, Rich Bisaccia is, I think he's the highest paid special teams coordinator in football. He's the associate head coach of the Green Bay Packers. This is where he's got to literally show why the Packers are paying him so much money, because this rule, it could unleash Keyshawn Nixon, like you said, two-time defending all-pro kick returner in the NFL. So a lot of pressure is I feel like a lot of pressure with this, with the Greg Joseph signing, with Anders Carlson development. Rich Bisaccia is really becoming he's going to be under a magnifying glass this upcoming season for sure.
No pressure, none at all.
Yeah, right. So, and I wanted to touch base real quick, where in 2023, only 21% of kickoffs were returned. The projected number, it could spike for kick returns. 50 to 60% of kickoffs could be returned next year, which is going to be interesting. Now, an interesting part of this, though, the owners voted in favor of this rule change 29-3, and Packers president Mark Murphy was one of the three to turn it down. And we talked about Keyshawn Nixon. He was on the Twitter sphere talking about how much he loves this rule change. Gil, what do you make of that? Why Mark Murphy would say no to this when you have a two-time All-Pro kick returner in Keyshawn Nixon?
Well, what was the explanation that was given was they wanted to test it in the preseason first rather than going directly to it, maybe to iron out some of the kinks. I mean, look, this is going to be the first time in a non-scouting uh, you know, in a non-scouting approach, that you're going to see NFL coaches watching a lot of XFL tape just to see how this works,
Yeah.
and what strategies, what blocking formations, what coverage formations were used, because this is something different and new. So I think, I guess it's not that the Packers were opposed to it on its face. They just wanted to do it a little more gradually. And, the drawback to that, if you do it in the preseason and then go back to the old rules in the regular season, is that wreaks havoc with coaches as well, where how do you tell who belongs on your special teams unit and who doesn't when they're not doing the thing they're going to do once the games count? So I see both sides of it, but look, 29-3, it's here to stay, or it's a 1-year trial actually. So
Yeah.
they're going to do it this year, and I'm sure they'll tweak it in some way, because someone's going to find a loophole and do something silly, and we'll see some tweaks between now and next year if it stays.
And with Mark Murphy voting against it too, where like you said, with the preseason trial basis, that's what he thought it was going to be. But maybe it's a matter of, hey, Keyshawn Nixon was dominating in kick returning in the previous fashion, and maybe he wanted to stick with what he knew he had an advantage, what the Packers had an advantage with the old kickoff style, with the old kick return style, where Keyshawn Nixon is a dynamic return man. And maybe that's why Mark Murphy was like, hey, I want to stick with this because we have the guy who's best at kick returning right now in the NFL. So it could be there's multiple different angles to this why Mark Murphy maybe said no to that initially.
Yeah, and look, bottom line, it passed, whether he voted for it or against it. So now the time has come to see, will Keyshawn Nixon be as dominant in this new format? And to me, the thought of Keyshawn Nixon not having guys coming with 30, 40 yards of a full head of steam at him, man, if he has that little extra half a step, that could be a lot of trouble for opposing special teams units.
And you wonder too, where it's not just Keyshawn Nixon who could return. There could be two return guys. So we may see Jaden Reed get the ball a little bit too. So
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about Jaden Reed in just a bit, but I would love to have those two guys back returning kickoffs for the Green Bay Packers. And again, with this new kickoff rule, I'd like to think this will help the Packers. But with how bad the special teams has been for as long as I can remember, this somehow may hurt the Packers more in the long run than it helps. Am I wrong to assume this or be fearful of this?
You're not wrong, but here's why it may not hurt them. Look, you mentioned it before. Rich Bisaccia is the highest paid special teams coordinator in the NFL. Mm-hmm. He is the guru. They brought him in to basically clean up the mess that has been the Packers special teams for too long, as you correctly alluded to. Here's where Rich Bisaccia has to earn his money. He has to go out there and figure out the best way to utilize, Keyshawn Nixon and Jaden Reed, and the best way to cover this stuff. Here is where, you hired this guru to be your special teams coordinator. Prove it. Show me what you got, because it's time to earn your money.
It's time to put your money where your mouth is. That's what I used to say. That's what my dad used to say, Gil. So, but going on about Jaden Reed though, and moving along in this episode, we're going to grade the 2023 Packers wide receivers. It's the last group that we have yet to grade from the 2023 season. Let's start off with Samori Toure, second-year receiver, appeared in 11 games this year, 8 catches for 78 yards. Showed some promise as a rookie, had a big touchdown against the Buffalo Bills in that Sunday night game in his rookie season, but just buried on the depth chart due to the new blood in the receiver room that they added from the 2022 season. He was sidelined the final 8 games of the year with an injury. Gil, what's your grade for Samori Toure?
I'll go with a C-. We didn't see that jump in the second year. You mentioned, all the draft picks that were added, and then, some undrafted free agents who surpassed him on the depth chart as well. Look, I don't know if I were a betting man, unless he takes a big jump in training camp, I don't know if there's room for Toure on this roster next year.
I agree, and I don't find it out of the realm of possibility that the Packers draft a receiver in this upcoming draft. If there's someone they really like and they just add to that room, I think he's on the outside looking in. I gave him a C- as well, mainly because he didn't make that second-year jump like I thought he would. I thought he had a really good IQ level for a late round draft pick that he was, and I thought there was something possibly there, but I don't think there's much. I don't expect him to be in a Packer uniform in week 1, whether it's in Green Bay, somewhere else in America, or in Brazil. I just don't see him being a Green Bay Packer next season. Next up, we have Malik Heath. You alluded to one of those undrafted rookies who kind of took his spot on the roster and overtook him on the depth chart. Undrafted rookie out of Mississippi State, had a dominant preseason where he caught hospital ball after hospital ball from Sean Clifford. The Packers had no choice but to hold on to him after the preseason that he had. 13 games as a Packer this year, 15 catches for 125 yards, and he scored that touchdown late in that Monday night loss against the New York Giants. He was a healthy scratch in both playoff games. Not really his fault, just a lot of receivers who were playing really well, and they couldn't play everybody. Gil, what is your grade of Malik Heath from his rookie year?
I go with a B-. I mean, he far exceeded expectations, but obviously did not play a huge role on the team. So I like his potential. I want to see. Look, here's a guy I love to root for. A great story, hardworking, exceeded expectations to make the team, which, most people didn't expect. And when he was called on, he performed solidly.
Yeah.
So I'm rooting for him. I'm hoping he'll be on the team again next year. But, was he a Pro Bowler? No, certainly not. So I go B minus. How about you?
I give him a B because he did essentially make this team against the odds, and he was really I thought he was really impressive when he did play. He showed a lot of toughness. He showed a lot of
Yes.
grit. There's something there with Malik Heath. I Who knows if he makes the roster next year. He's gonna have to have another great preseason, honestly, to possibly make this roster next year. It's just gonna be very interesting where he could be one of these fringe guys. Who knows? Maybe another team likes him and they trade him for a future draft pick or something like that. I don't know what's going to happen with Malik Heath. I don't have a crystal ball, but I like his toughness, what he showed off. And it's not really to discredit Malik Heath if he doesn't make this team. It's just a matter of there's a lot of talent on this roster. And he, like Samori Toure, could be on the outside looking in. And one of those guys who rose to the occasion last year, moving along, was Bo Melton. Big play Bo Melton. Late season call up to the 53-man roster. He played 5 games, 16 catches for 218 yards, scored a touchdown, 2 catches for 26 yards, and a touchdown against the 49ers in the playoffs. Former 7th-round draft selection out of Rutgers by the Seattle Seahawks. He had a monster performance on New Year's Eve against the Minnesota Vikings and was the first Packer receiver to register more than 100 receiving yards in a game last season. Bo Melton was awesome, Gil. What's your grade for Bo Melton this year?
I go with a solid B, and I love Bo Melton. I
really
mean,
do. Yeah, I do too.
Just a hardworking guy, 7th-round pick of the Seahawks, practice squad, works his tail off, gets his opportunity, and shows what he can do. I am looking forward to seeing him in training camp this year, and I think even with all the talent and depth that this team has at receiver, there is a place for Bo Melton on this roster.
Oh, 100%. And when he was a practice squad call up for those first 3 games, and then he had that monster performance on New Year's Eve against the San Francisco 49ers, and they said, "Hey, like, you've earned a spot on this roster, like a permanent spot on this roster." And that team, that locker room was so happy for him, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Where just watching, where it's like, man, how was he not on an NFL roster? And how was he just sitting on the practice squad for so long in Green Bay? And he looks like a guy who could be a guy for the Packers going down the road. There's so much talent in this receiver room, and he has a legit shot to make the team next year. I give him a B+ because he is a legit threat when he's in the game, in my opinion. And his younger brother, Max Melton, he's a corner from Rutgers who is in the draft this year. The Packers have a need at depth at corner. Maybe they have the Melton brothers come to Green Bay next year.
I love it. I've been keeping an eye on him too. So yeah.
And if Max Melton is half the person Bo Melton is, that's a guy worth taking in the draft. If I were Brian Gutekunst, in my opinion, but Brian Gutekunst's job is to pick the best players and put the best team together possible. So who knows what he's thinking compared to what we're thinking, but that'd be a pretty cool story to see Melton Square dominating at 1265 Lombardi down the road. Next up on the receiver list, we have Dontavion Wicks, the rookie out of Virginia, played 15 games this year, 39 catches for 581 yards, both third on the team. He had 4 reception touchdowns, averaged 14.9 yards per catch this year. That was second on the team. He had 11 plays of 20 or more yards. That was second best on the team as well. In the playoffs, 2 catches, 25 yards, had a touchdown in that big monster win over Dallas. What's your grade from Dontavion Wicks, a guy who really went above and beyond expectations this year?
Yeah, I go with a B+ for Wicks, and I think his potential is, he showed flashes of ability that he could even be a wide receiver 1 if he gets a little bit more experience. He has speed. He has separation. He's an intelligent football player. I really liked the potential that I saw from this kid. And you realize, early on in the season, he did not have a huge role. Mm-hmm. And when guys went down and were out of the lineup, he stepped in and showed what he really could do. And I get the feeling he's just scratching the surface right now of his ultimate potential. He's got to work on a few things, but boy, do I love what this kid is capable of. How about you?
I give him a B plus as well. His footwork is outstanding. He is, and his ability to get off the line of scrimmage and separate from DBs it's not Devontae Adams-esque, because Devontae Adams, that is the poster child of what you want to be as an NFL receiver when you get off the line of scrimmage. Devontae, nobody's better than Devontae at that. I will 100% say that he's better than he's the best at that. He's the best in the NFL right now. But Dontavion Wicks is right. He has the potential to be that great, because that is a hard thing for NFL rookie receivers to adjust to the physical style, the press coverage, just getting off the line of scrimmage. That's an adjustment for a lot of NFL rookies. And Dontavion Wicks seemed to really take that in stride and really seem to understand it more and more. And I think he's a smart kid too. I'm with you on that. He's a guy who early on in his rookie year, he did have some struggles here and there, but I think it was just a matter of the whole Packers offense. We've talked about it over and over, just understanding how to play in the NFL more and more each week and just gaining more knowledge and wisdom. And I believe Dontavion Wicks is in store to have a really big second year for the Green Bay Packers in the NFL. Just really, really love this kid. I love him a lot.
Yeah, I am looking forward to his future. And, if you think about the reason that receivers in their rookie year have trouble getting off the line of scrimmage in the NFL, like in college, there are maybe 2 or 3 players on an opposing team on defense who may ever play in the NFL. Now, all of a sudden, you've got 11 guys against you, all of whom were like those 2 or 3 best players that you're going to face in college, and you're facing them on every play. So the size, the speed, the complexity of the playbook, it's all exponentially more difficult in the pros. And boy, did he show the potential to really thrive at this next level.
You're not facing a future branch manager at Duke at corner, every
Correct.
week. You're facing pro athletes. And that takes a little bit of adjusting. Dontavion Wicks, a lot of promise there. Next up, we have Christian Watson, promising rookie year. His second season this past year for the Packers, pretty marred by injuries. He played 9 games, 28 catches for 422 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had a team best 15.1 yards per catch. Also had 4 carries in the running game for 11 yards, 2 catches for 20 yards in 2 playoff games after he came back from his second hamstring injury. Dealing with hamstring issues, he's obviously trying to nip it in the bud to see what's going on this offseason. I give him a lot of credit there, trying to figure out what's going on. In my opinion, when Christian Watson's on the field, I think he's their best receiver. But you got to be able to play to show off and really prove that you're the number one guy. What's your grade from Christian Watson from year 2?
I go with a C+. He showed flashes. Look, first of all, he played in 9 games, but he was probably not on a play count and fully healthy for like 4. Maybe. Yeah. So I give him a C+. It was a disappointing year. I give his hamstrings an F. But, and that's not his fault. And like you said, he's working he's going to a specialist. He's trying to figure that out. But look, he's got to be available and on the field and ready to play. You could have all the potential in the world, but if you're on the sideline, it doesn't do the team a heck of a lot of good. When he's on the field, because of his unique combination of size and speed, he opens things up for players even when he doesn't get the ball. But look, there's still a few things he needs to work on to take his game to the next level, be a little bit more precise when running pass patterns. The hands have to be a little bit more consistent. He has the ability to be an elite receiver in this league, but he's got a little more work to do and he's got to stay healthy. How about your grade?
I give him a B- because I'm just giving him a little more benefit of the doubt, where the 2 of the best Packer wins this past year was against Detroit and Kansas City. And what was the common denominator in those games? Christian Watson was pretty damn good. He was awesome. And you just saw where it's like, if that guy is going and he is the deep threat and he's making plays in the pass catching game, it just takes the Packers offense to a whole nother level. And what sucked about that Chiefs game was obviously I think Christian Watson's a terrific person. I really do. Yeah, I really like, he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's a terrific athlete, but he's even said where it's like, hey, I'm so fast for my body. That's why these hamstring injuries happen. And it's just, that's the way it goes when you're a guy as fast and as big and strong as he is. And what stunk about that Kansas City game, where the play that he got hurt, where he re-injured that hamstring, he was trying to make the right play. And that's where I couldn't get mad at the guy, because he got the first down. He had to stay in bounds. He couldn't decelerate out of bounds or else the clock would stop. He stayed in bounds to make sure the clock kept running. And because he came to such an abrupt stop he tried to avoid taking a big hit, and he had a concussion as a rookie. You don't want those to pile up early in your career, especially in the NFL. It could be Sam Shields all over again with those concussions and everything. He tried to make the right play, or abrupt stop late, and that's when he hurt his hamstring again. And it sucked, because he tried to make the right play, and he is real. I think he really is a smart player. It's just, he's got to be healthy. And I hope if he could put together a full 17-game season, man, he is going to threaten he's going to threaten the top of the charts in terms of receiving yardage and touchdowns and everything, because the guy, 9 games this year, he had 5 touchdowns. He had 10 total touchdowns as a rookie. He's a touchdown machine, and it's hard to keep him out of the end zone when he's fully healthy.
Yeah, if he's healthy for 17 games, look out. So the sky is the limit. He's got a couple of things to work on, but the potential is so there.
You do not give up on Christian Watson, in my opinion. And obviously another guy that we're not going to give up anytime soon, because he was so good as a rookie, was Jayden Reed. He missed 1 game this year, led the team with 64 catches for 793 yards, both Packer rookie receiving records. Registered a team best 8 receiving touchdowns, had 16 plays of 20 yards or more. That was number 1 on the team. He also had 11 carries in the running game for 119 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. In the playoffs, 4 catches, had a carry for 9 yards in 2 playoff games. Gil, what's your grade from Jayden Reed from a really outstanding rookie season?
I go A-. Just a great season. Look, he started out as the slot guy, and the amazing thing is, he led the team in catches, led the team in yards, tied for the team lead in touchdown receptions, and he only played 56% of the offensive snaps in the games that he played in. Think about that. I mean, that's just an incredible number. I love his potential. He picked up the offense, I think, a little quicker than any of the other draft picks in this year's draft. He was a starter at the slot from day one. I like his ability to, he first had one move where he would start on the inside and make a fake and then go toward the sideline. That was sort of his first big signature play. But as the year went on, the route tree grew. You saw him learning, you saw him adjusting, and some of the plays he made down the stretch with Jordan Love, where you could see them on the same page, making the same adjustment. Wow. So A- for him, and very close to an A for that matter.
For me, it's an A. He was their best receiver. He is such a dynamic player. You see the Elton Jenkins jersey right there on the screen. That was after I had a David Bakhtiari jersey. He's no longer a Packer. I'm going to miss him. Elton Jenkins, he was my number 1 choice for my next jersey. Jayden Reed was number 2. And it's the kid's a gamer. He's just outstanding. And you talked about, and I was going to touch on that too, his ability to adjust on the fly later in the year was so evident, where they had the loss at Lambeau against Tampa, disappointing game, obviously, but he had that touchdown where Jordan Love scrambled out and he just he sprinted to the back corner of the end zone, and Jordan Love put a beautiful ball there. Jayden Reed made a beautiful catch and adjustment, and that was improv. That was improvisation. And then in the final game of the year against the Chicago Bears, there was a play where Jordan Love kind of had to escape the pocket a little bit, and he had to adjust, and Jayden Reed just bolts down the sideline and gets a little bit of an opening, gets a window for Jordan Love, makes a huge play in the receiving game. And Jayden Reed is just going to he's going to frustrate Viking fans and Bears fans and Lions fans, I feel like, for a while, because his ability to make plays in space and adjust on the fly. And if he has that connection with Jordan Love that we saw those last few weeks, oh man, he is going to frustrate some opponents for sure.
Life's tough.
Yeah.
I'm really feeling sorry for all those Bears and Vikings and Lions fans.
I'm not. I'm just glad Jayden Reed's on our team, and a guy who grew up as a Bears fan, in his childhood, and now he's a Green Bay Packer. But as soon as he got drafted, he said, "Hey, I'm not a Bears fan. The page certain. I'm all Packers. Go
There
Pack
you go.
all the way. So you gotta love that, and just excited for the future, Jaden Reed, and see what they're able to do with him now a little more going into his second year. Now that Matt LaFleur knows what he has with Jaden Reed as a receiver.
Gonna be exciting. You know, the only problem you got with all these receivers, there's only one ball.
Yeah.
That's, you know.
Yeah. But luckily, it's an unselfish group, and we do have one more receiver to talk about, and
yes, we do.
That's Romeo Doubs, second-year receiver out of Nevada, played in every single game this year. Second on the team behind Reed with 59 catches, 674 yards. Also registered a team-best 8 receiving touchdowns, tied with Jaden Reed. Had 10 catches for 234 yards and a touchdown in 2 playoff games. Really had a good postseason. Gil, what's your grade for Romeo Doubs in his second year?
Boy, it is tough. I gave him a B+, very close to an A-. I really do enjoy watching him. I think he is the most reliable. Like, if it's 3rd and 8, you look for Romeo Doubs because he's going to get you 10. You know, I mean, he is a very smart player. He has probably, I think, the best chemistry with Jordan Love. They've worked together a lot over the last 2 years. Since Doubs joined the team. And, to me, Romeo Doubs is not outstanding in any one particular area. Like, you could talk about the size and speed of Watson or the adjusting of Jaden Reed. But you know what? He does everything well.
Yeah.
He may not be outstanding in anything, but he is not weak in any area, and he's good in almost every area. I give him a solid B+, and to me, he is probably the most reliable and consistent receiver in this group right now.
I also give him a B+. He reminds me a lot. You talk about all the traits and how he does everything well. He reminds me a lot of James Jones. When James Jones was with the Packers, he wasn't a guy he wasn't a number one, not your typical number one guy, but he was very reliable, and you knew you could count on him. Like you said, when you need 9 yards, he'd get 12 or something like that. And James Jones is very much that way. And the early reports out of training camp, I remember last year, was Jordan Love seems to have a good connection with Romeo Doubs. And it showed this past season where in the red zone, Romeo Doubs is really the number one option in red zone possessions on offense, where he made some tough grabs in the end zone too. There's a reason why he was tied for the team lead with 8 receiving touchdowns with Jaden Reed, is because he's dependable in that area of the field.
Yeah. And he knows how to get open for just a fraction of a second, and then Love finds him and gets him the ball, and it's great to watch. It really is.
Yeah, and he had a really good postseason too, and I hope that leads to a really, really good third year, a really great third year. And Romeo Doubs, the big thing there is we saw improvement from being his rookie season to his second year, where he battled a lot of injuries as a rookie, and Rodgers wasn't really looking for him as soon as he got back. I don't think he was 100% at all when he came back into the mix last year after suffering that nasty ankle injury against the Detroit Lions in that disastrous loss last season that really just their season spiraled out of control after that. But with Romeo Doubs, you saw him take a big jump in the second year, especially late in his second year. I hope to see a big jump in year 3 as well. Not included was rookie Grant DuBose. He was on the practice squad pretty much all of last season. He did get called up to the active roster as a practice squad call-up in Week 18, the regular season finale against the Bears, but he did not register a snap. So no grade for Grant DuBose, a guy who may be on the practice squad next year. Maybe the Packers move on. Who knows? We'll see what shakes up this offseason. Gil, before we do get to some trivia and wrap up, what articles do you have coming up online for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV?
Well, for Cheesehead TV, I did an article about the decision by Brian Gutekunst to start drafting quarterbacks again, not every year, but pretty close to it in the late rounds of the draft, and went back and discussed, where he learned it, which was from Ron Wolf, and how it worked out for the Packers throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s. For Packers Post, I talked about the rules change and how it's going to affect Keyshawn Nixon, and also about the negotiations with Kenny Clark on an extension. So lots to discuss.
Give Kenny that third contract. Give it to him. And then also with drafting quarterbacks, maybe Gutekunst finds another Matt Hasselbeck or Aaron Brooks
Yeah.
or Mark Brunell or Kurt Warner or Matt Flynn. Who knows? But I like that approach. Stick with the Ron Wolf principles, because that's what got you from the cellar to the top when Ron Wolf was running things. And hopefully we can keep that going for a long time in Green Bay, Gil.
Here.
You ready for some trivia?
Let's go for it.
All right, well, we got to talk a little March Madness again with today's trivia. The Marquette Golden Eagles of the good land of Wisconsin. They will play in the Sweet 16 and hopefully the Elite Eight this upcoming weekend. Not sure if you knew this, but a long time ago, Marquette had a college football program. They had a team for 78 years before folding in December of 1960, but they did help send some players to the NFL over that time. Gil, over under 2.5. How many former Marquette University football players were drafted by the NFL's oldest franchise, our Green Bay Packers?
I will say over.
It is actually under. One player. Can you name that player? I doubt it, because I had to look this up too.
No, I cannot name the player.
Okay, well, the Packers drafted halfback Johnny Strzelkalski with the 6th overall pick in the 1946 NFL draft. The Milwaukee-born back never actually played a game as a Packer in his home state. He spent his entire career with the San Francisco 49ers, landed on a couple of all-pro teams with the Niners, was a one-time Pro Bowler during his 7-year career. Strzelkalski appeared in 81 games in his career, totaling 3,415 rushing yards, catching 93 passes for 1,218 yards, and scored 31 total touchdowns in his career. He also served in the United States Air Force prior to his football career. So Johnny Strzelkalski, the pride of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was drafted by the Packers, but never actually played for the Packers.
Because now, if he played with the 49ers in 46, that was with the AAFC. He wasn't even in the NFL initially.
Correct. Yeah. So Gil, you're just feeding me knowledge. I love this. Even when I'm the one who's providing the trivia, you're feeding me knowledge.
Always fun. Always fun to talk football and football history, especially Packers history. So always fun. Always fun.
Yes, sir.
That's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packers Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers, or to ask us questions. Or you could email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. And of course, we thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.